Nancy Pfister was found murdered on February 26, 2014, in a walk-in closet of her secluded home in the Rocky Mountains. She had been beaten in the head and chest with a hammer, axe, and lamp. Nancy was described as having been a small-town socialite and was well known in her small community. In October 2014, Trey and Nancy Styler, Pfister's former roommates, were charged with her murder. Let's get into it. Nancy Pfister, raised in Basalt, Colorado, a suburb of Aspen, was born on July 4, 1956, in Orfordino, Idaho. She was the daughter of Art Pfister, who made a fortune when he turned his family cattle ranch into the Buttermilk ski resort in 1958, which helped turn the sleepy town in the middle of the Rockies into a premier winter and vacation destination. The Pfisters were like Aspen royalty. Everyone catered to them because they basically helped put Aspen on the map. Art served in the war for 4 years and first came to Aspen on Thanksgiving 1946. He built his first house in Aspen on Castle Creek Road after he married his wife in 1958. Art was a true rancher. When he bought his ranch on Buttermilk Mountain, he was in the cattle business, and then he began raising quarter horses. This ranch also helped him to become a ski area developer. He owned the ranch, and his neighbor owned some buttermilk land as well. They both thought there needed to be a beginner mountain in the Aspen area, so they decided to open Buttermilk Ski Area together in 1958. He eventually sold his share of the mountain to the Aspen Skiing Company, but remained on the board of the skiing company until it was purchased by Marvin Davis and 20th Century Fox. His ranch was later developed into what is now known as the Maroon Creek Club. Arthur O. Pfister died peacefully with his family and friends at his side on March 26, 2007 at Aspen Valley Hospital. Her mother, Betty Pfister, was a member of the Women Air Force Service pilots in World War II, who in later years flew a helicopter, which she was notoriously known for parking in the family's driveway. After the Women's Air Force Service pilots were deactivated, Betty worked as a flight instructor and as a co-pilot for several non-scheduled airlines flying DC-3 type aircraft. In 1964, Betty learned to fly helicopters and fell in love all over again. She was the 52nd woman in the world to obtain a helicopter license. She became an esteemed member of an elite international organization of women's helicopter pilots known as the Whirly Girls. In the early 70s, she became a member of the United States helicopter team. Her team represented the U.S. in the World Helicopter Championships in both England and Russia. After she was diagnosed with dementia, Nancy became her primary caregiver until her death. Elizabeth Haas Pfister passed away peacefully at her home in Aspen, Colorado on November 17, 2011. Growing up in one of Aspen's most prestigious families, Nancy lived in the high life. She mingled with members of the Kennedy family, partied with gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson, and dated actors Jack Nicholson and Michael Douglas, who she met while they were vacationing at the resort. Nancy attended college at Brooklyn's Pratt Institute, but dropped out and returned home to Colorado at age 20. She continued to help run the family business, which at the time played a major role in the local tourism industry. At age 29 and never having been married, Nancy gave birth to her daughter Juliana. She later gave birth to a son at age 39. Pfister raised both of her children as a single mother in a log home her father had built for her in 1991. Kathy Carpenter and Nancy Pfister had been friends ever since Kathy first arrived in Aspen in early 2000. There was something special about her, Kathy said of Pfister. Either you love Nancy or you hate her. I loved her. In fact, Kathy, a single mother and bank teller, was also considered Nancy's personal assistant, a task which she did as a friend and not for pay. So when Pfister was out of town, Kathy was the one who watched her house, took care of her dog, and so on. In November 2013, Nancy left for what she hoped would be a 6-month stay in Australia. Nancy Pfister may have been an Aspen institution, but she wasn't a fan of the Rocky Mountain winters. As the cold winter came in, she would usually indulge in trips to warmer climates. However, she didn't have complete access to her family's wealth, so she sometimes had to resort to other means of raising money to pay for her trips. In the winter of 2013, she was planning a trip to Australia. Partially to finance it, she decided to rent out her house in Aspen during the months leading up to the trip and also while she was gone. The ad read, 3-bedroom house, 3.5 baths, house on the mountain, no cats. The couple who took her up on the ad were both in their 60s, a retired anesthesiologist, Dr. William Tyler Stiles, and his wife, Nancy Stiles, a world-renowned expert in lily pads and founder of the Victoria Conservancy, a branch of International Water Lily and Water Gardening Society. To them, the house seemed like a perfect opportunity for a new start in a new town. Nearly 10 years older than Nancy, the Stiles had met decades earlier in a hospital in Wichita, Kansas. They married in 1985 and had no children together, although Trey Stiler had 2 daughters from a previous marriage. In 1986, they moved to a large house in Valley Center, Kansas, which they had built together, and became world known for their shared hobby of growing the Victorian water lily. The Stilers purchased matching Harley-Davidson motorcycles sometime in early 1900s and began making frequent trips to the Aspen area around the same time. In 2000, Trey became ill and had to stop practicing medicine, which put a financial strain on the couple. Dr. William Trey Stiles III was a noted Denver physician who met his wife when she was a nurse. The couple lived the upscale life of high-end medical professionals until a degenerative neurological condition forced Trey to retire in his early 60s. As a result of his health problems, Trey couldn't stand for long periods of time and often used a wheelchair. In the summer of 2013, the couple sold their Kansas home, rented 2 storage units in North Glen, Colorado, and began temporarily staying with friends in the Denver area. Seeking a change in fortune, they moved to Aspen with the hopes of opening a beauty spa. They contacted Nancy Pfister to inquire about her real estate offer in the local paper. After Pfister initially bonded with the pair over their plans to open a spa, even encouraging to use her home as their base of operations and inviting them to move in with her for a month while she got ready for her trip. They claimed Pfister transformed completely as soon as the first payment had changed hands. Nancy requested $12,000 up front for the use of her home and $4,000 per month. Nancy let the Stilers move in on September 24, 2013. They brought with them expensive equipment they had purchased for their new business, but the relationship quickly soured, with Nancy accusing the couple of owing her money. The Stilers had stopped paying rent after living with her for 2 months. Nancy demanded that they vacate her home and claimed they owed her $14,000, for which she would hold their equipment as collateral. Nancy began bad-mouthing the Stilers on Facebook in comments they could see, which they feared would ruin their reputation in town. The Stilers had gone from trying to restart their life to being kicked out, leaving behind thousands of dollars worth of spa equipment that was being stored in Pfister's garage. Furthermore, Pfister was demanding thousands more in payment for damages to her house. Nancy called Kathy and told her she was kicking the couple out when she returned. The Stallers told Kathy that they had moved into a motel in Basalt, Colorado, returning to the home only to clear out their belongings, and that they would be out by February 22nd, the day that Nancy was to return. Nancy returned that day, but they had not yet removed all their belongings. She allowed them to come back a few times a week in order to move all of their belongings to the motel in Basalt. When the couple failed to do so in a timely manner, Nancy began locking the house during the day while she went to work. Police immediately became suspicious when they received information that Nancy and her 16-year-old son had abruptly returned home early from vacation a week prior to her murder. Kathy Carpenter told them that she had picked the two up from the airport, driven them home, and was asked by Nancy if she could stay at the house over the weekend. Almost immediately after arriving home, Nancy phoned her son's father and arranged for her son to spend the weekend at his house. She did not give an explanation to her son as to why he could not stay at her house that weekend. After spending the weekend with Nancy, Kathy got up early and left for work, leaving Nancy alone at the house. So she left a note on the door for guests saying that Nancy was sleeping and to call her to see if she was awake enough to talk before entering the house. February 26, 2014, Kathy became concerned when Pfister had not returned her phone call from 2 days earlier. After learning that Nancy had not shown up for her job as a tour guide for 2 days, Kathy drove to her secluded log home on the north slope of Buttermilk Mountain. As she entered the master bedroom, she noticed the bed in disarray, the comforter draped over the side, and the sheets pulled off one side of the mattress. As she drew closer, she noticed a very small stain of blood spatter on the bed frame. Karen found the bedroom closet locked. Using a skeleton key that Nancy had given her, she was able to unlock the door where she discovered Nancy Pfister's lifeless body. She immediately called 911.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
Help me. Oh my God. Oh.
What is the address of the emergency?
Oh. He came in and he was Buttermilk Road.
Is that a house, business, or apartment?
It's a house. It's Nancy Pfister's house. My bed.
Ma'am, tell me exactly what happened.
Oh, okay. My bed had it. I got my bed in the closet.
Nancy Pfister was still in her pajamas and had a large gasp in her torso where she had been struck with an axe. She was bound with an extension cord and wrapped in plastic bags and blankets. There was no defensive wounds on Nancy Pfister's body, which led the medical examiner to believe she had been beaten while she slept. He determined the cause of her death was due to blunt force trauma to the head and exsanguination. The wounds to Nancy Pfister's face were later determined to have been caused by someone beating her with a hammer. Investigators turned their attention to the mattress where they believed she had been murdered. When they flipped the mattress over, they found a large pool of blood, indicating that whoever had killed Nancy had flipped the mattress in order to cover his or her tracks. The police believe that Nancy had been dead since Monday morning and had laid in the closet for 2 days before Kathy had discovered her. Based on where her body was placed, investigators also believe she had been attacked by 2 people who carried her body to the closet. Shortly afterward, they zeroed in on Trey and Nancy Staller, the couple who had been renting her house, as there were no signs of forced entry. Police had no reason to suspect the Stallers until they discovered that they had been in a monetary dispute with Nancy. The dispute stemmed from her refusal to fix minor broken utilities in the house, including a leaky faucet, as well as various power outlets that no longer worked. The Stallers also complained about the house smelling like cigarettes and accused Nancy of blaming the smell on them in order to keep their security deposit. Nancy Pfister was unhappy, but told her friends and family she did not feel it was right to evict the couple during the Christmas holiday season. The Stallers were separately questioned by police, and they both denied any involvement in the crime. Nancy admitted she had once said she wanted to kill Pfister, but insisted it was just an exaggeration in a moment of frustration. Trey also denied being involved in the murder and told investigators that he was physically incapable of committing a murder. "My condition is such that I don't think I could beat up a kid," he said. Trey took and failed a polygraph test, which added to investigators' suspicions. But they could not make a murder case against the two. DNA could not be used because it could easily be explained the couple had lived with Pfister for 5 months before the murder. A few days later, the Stallers were arrested after a city worker in Basalt stumbled upon a trash bag placed into a plastic trash can. Inside, investigators discovered a bloody hammer along with a prescription pill bottle in Nancy Pfister's name and a vehicle registration card for Nancy and Trey Staller's Jaguar. The city worker immediately contacted the police. Police discovered that the trash bin was behind the motel where the Stallers were staying. When the trash collector reported the items to authorities, they also found a key evidence, a claw hammer, still bearing some of Nancy Pfister's blood, and on one of the plastic bags, Trey Staller's DNA. Another important piece of evidence came when investigators discovered the owner's key to the closet in which Nancy's body was found outside the Stallers' hotel room. Trey, 65, and Nancy, 62, were arrested on March 3, 2014, and charged with first-degree murder. In her interview with the police, Nancy said that Pfister was a liar and an alcoholic. According to Nancy Staller, Pfister treated her like a slave and treated Kathy the same way. Prosecutors used this to say the Stallers and Kathy had motive to kill Nancy Pfister. They took a hard look at Kathy, who had keys to the home since she often watched the property when Pfister was away. Investigators also noted the bizarre comments Kathy had made on the 911 call to report the death. "She's dead, full of blood," an hysterical Kathy said. Yet, Nancy's body had been concealed in blankets and a plastic bag, making it difficult to tell that it was even a body at all. We're looking at photos of the crime scene, and we knew there was no way that she saw what she said she saw. Kathy had also been the last known person to see Nancy alive and had pinned up a "Do Not Disturb" sign on her door when she left. Kathy told investigators she left the note there so her friend could recover from jet lag in peace and insisted she had nothing to do with Nancy's murder. But investigators also pointed out the day after Kathy found Pfister's body, she went to the bank and took out the $6,000 in cash from Nancy's safety deposit box. She insisted she wanted to give the money to Nancy's daughter, Juliana, as part of her earlier promise she made to her friend. Investigators believe that Kathy bonded with Stallers over their shared frustration concerning Nancy and worked together to carry out the murder. Kathy was arrested 3 weeks after Nancy was killed and held along with the Stallers. However, no concrete evidence was found linking Kathy to Nancy Pfister's death. Kathy's possible involvement in the case has been widely disputed by friends and family of Nancy Pfister. Many believe that the police were suspicious of Kathy due to her intense media coverage in the aftermath of the murder. It seemed like the case was all wrapped up until a sudden surprise confession from Trey. Trey Staller told police that he wanted to make a statement regarding the murder. He had taken a plea bargain, confessed, and plead guilty to first-degree murder, and both his wife Nancy and Kathy Carpenter would be released. Trey began his statement when he told the police, "I lost my mind, or at least my rational mind. It was me. It was all me. Trey described how he slipped out of his motel room while his wife Nancy was sleeping. He then drove his Jaguar to Nancy Pfister's house to confront her about the way she was treating his wife when they rented her home. He grabbed a hammer and an axe and obtained the orange extension cords and a plastic garbage bag, which he later used to tie her up. He then described how he struck her in the face with the hammer over and over again until she stopped moving. When he realized she was still breathing, he plunged the axe into her chest, killing her. He then wrapped Nancy's body in her bed sheet in multiple plastic bags and left her in the closet. He grabbed some of her belongings, such as her medication and cigarettes, to make it look like she was gone. He said he never told his wife. Kathy was ruled out as a suspect. As part of the plea deal, charges were dropped against Nancy Styler, and she cannot be charged for the crime in the future. Suspicion remains that Nancy Styler may have helped carry out the murder. Given Trey Styler's age and medical conditions, investigators do not believe he could have carried Pfister's body to the closet on his own. In 2014, Trey pleaded to second-degree murder and was given a 20-year prison sentence. Barely a year into his sentence, August 6, 2015, Trey was found dead in his cell at Arrowhead Correctional Facility in Canyon City, Colorado. An autopsy later found he had committed suicide by choking after ingesting small pieces of plastic from a broken pen. He was 67 years old. Shortly before his apparent suicide, he began divorce proceedings against Nancy Styler. Following Trey's confessions, murder charges against Nancy Styler and Catherine Carpenter were dropped. Nancy later changed her last name to Mason and moved to Massachusetts. After being informed of her husband's death, she released a statement saying, "I hope people will remember him for the man he was before his physical and mental illness took over his life." After his death, Nancy Styler filed for bankruptcy in Fall River, Massachusetts under her maiden name, Nancy Mason. Upon her ex-husband's death, Nancy tried to collect the $1 million life insurance policy Trey had taken out that she was the beneficiary of. Juliana Pfister sued Nancy Mason. Mason listed about $92,000 in debt when she filed for bankruptcy, and a judge had her turn over $150,000 of the insurance benefit to the bankruptcy trustee in the case. After Pfister's bankruptcy claim, a judge froze the remaining $850,000 of the insurance proceeds. A stipulation motion filed by attorneys for Juliana Pfister and Nancy Mason in U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Massachusetts says Juliana Pfister's claim had been resolved. Pfister is expected to receive $850,000, the bulk of the $1 million life insurance benefit. Throughout the investigation and after her husband's confession and conviction, Nancy maintained her innocence. In November 2015, just months after Trey Styler took his own life in prison and only about a year and a half after the passing of Nancy Pfister, Styler released a book, Guilt by Matrimony, a memoir of love, madness, and the murder of Nancy Pfister, written with the cooperation of journalists named Dalen Burry, who obtained the only interview with Trey Styler after his conviction. In the book, Nancy tells her side of events, painting Pfister as an abusive, self-loathing alcoholic and suggesting that she suffered from borderline personality disorder. These claims are just one of the many things about the book that anger Aspen residents, including Sheriff Joe DiSalvo. Throwing those kinds of stones at a woman who's been the victim of a murder is a horrible thing to do, he told the Aspen Daily News. You don't need to do that. She's dead. Your husband killed her. Leave it alone, he stated. I don't remember how I came across this story, but as soon as I seen it, I jotted down the name, because I definitely wanted to share it with you guys. The big question is, the number one question is, do you think that Trey Styler committed this crime alone? Comment below what you think and why. I know what I think. My opinion is no, but I want to know what you think. Alright guys, that is it for me. Thanks again for sticking around. Thousands of people watch my videos, but very few subscribe. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Alright guys, that is it for me. Till next time, take care of you.